Good morning, grade 12. Today we are going to continue with our novel North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, and we are going to be focusing on chapter 9 and 10. So when we look at the epigraph of chapter 9, it is entitled Dressing for Tea, and of course it is Mr. Thornton who is dressing for tea with the Hale family. Now, I think that epigraph is quite significant. The fact that they even announced dressing for tea tells us that this is it's a formal occasion, and two, Mr. Thornton holds the Hale family in high enough esteem that he needs to go home and change after work. And we are going to see that that is quite a bit of an irritation for his mother, who of course doesn't think much of the Hale family. Now when we read the little rhyme or the rhyme there, it says, let China's earth enriched with coloured stains, penciled with gold and streaked with azure veins, the grateful flavour of the Indian leaf, or mockers sunburnt berry glad receive. And that's actually quite cute. I like that little 4-line poem. The China's earth is a play on words, and it's referring to porcelain. Okay, the making of porcelain in China, your China teacup, you can see it, your China cup I should say, and then enriched with coloured stains, penciled with gold and streaked with azured veins. And so it's describing the painting on the cup. Azure is of course it's a color, it's blue, it's quite a deep blue, so the veins, you can get a mental image of what the outside of the cup looks like. And then it says the grateful flavor of the Indian leaf. And remember, this is a novel set in the Victorian times, so we are talking about trade with the Far East, and so India's leaf would be referring to tea. Or mockers sunburnt berry glad receive the cup. China's earth is receiving, which means pouring into the cup. Mockers sunburnt berry. Mocha, we're talking about coffee. Sunburnt berry, it's a berry that's of course deep red, almost maroon, your coffee berries, right? The berries containing the coffee beans. You follow. I don't want to belabor that point too much. And then when we start in line 3, 4 and 5, the chapter opens, maybe I should just take a step back. The chapter opens with Mr. Hale. He went up to different objects in the room as if examining them, but Margaret saw that it was merely a nervous trick, a way of putting off something he wished, yet feared to say. Out it came at last. And so we see the hesitance, that hesitation on the part of the father to announce to Margaret and her mother that he has invited Mr. Hale for tea. And that tells us that he is aware of their reluctance to engage with this man. Why the reluctance? Because they consider him their social inferior. He says in line 7, my dear, I've asked Mr. Thornton to come to tea tonight. And he's speaking here to Mrs. Hale. And we are made aware of the fact that she is constantly unhappy in Milton. In fact, it says an expression, this is in line 9, an expression of pain on her face which had become habitual to her of late. So she's always looking pained. She is always unhappy. And if we can tie that back to our stereotypical Victorian woman, she is like a petulant child. Okay? Everything revolves around her. The next line says, but she roused up into querulousness at the speech of her husband, which means that she wanted to start arguing. That's how strongly she felt about Mr. Thornton coming into her home, into her space. She says, Mr. Thornton, and tonight, what in the world does the man want to come here for? So she is really displeased with this man coming into her hallowed space. Then when we come to line 3 on page 87, we have Margaret speaking, and we're going to see that Margaret's first impression of Mr. Hale was not a positive one, and yet there's no valid reason for her not being happy with him. Oh, Mama, that shows you never saw Mr. Thornton. He looks like a person who would enjoy battling with every adverse thing he could meet, enemies, winds, or circumstance. And so, when you start reading that paragraph, it sounds like she's describing his character in glowing terms. He sounds like a strong man, but we notice there's a twist to how she is describing him, because by the time you get to line 8 and 9, no, can I take a step back? Sorry, to line 6. The more it rains and blows, the more certain we are to have him, meaning that this is a man who will not be put off. Okay, he's determined, and I think it's safe to say that the quality of stubbornness comes across here. And it's so funny that Margaret doesn't like Margaret doesn't like Mr. Thornton, yet she herself is stubborn by nature. In line 9 and 10, she says, and he won't want any amusement beyond talking to Papa, almost saying that the female of the household are of no consequence to Mr. Thornton. Again, a very stereotypical Victorian male perspective. I am really longing to see the Pythias to your Damon. So Elizabeth Gaskell's readers would have known what she is referring to when she speaks about Pythias to Damon, because here she's talking about not Greek mythology per se, she's talking about Greek legend. And these two characters, Pythias and Damon, they were good friends, and I don't think we need to dwell on the details. Suffice to say that they epitomize the ideal friendship, and they epitomize one being willing to sacrifice himself, his life, for his friend. And so Margaret is simply saying, oh, you guys are so good friends, you're probably willing to die for each other. Okay. In line 14, Margaret listens to her father saying, I don't know what you would ever like him or think him agreeable, Margaret. He's not a ladies' man. And so Mr. Thornton, he is about business. He is a very practical man, a very logical man, and not having the Victorian social etiquette. He's not charming, he doesn't defer to ladies, and that's probably one of the reasons why Margaret would not find him likable, I guess you could say. Then Mrs. Hale says in the next paragraph, so we will give him a welcome and some coconut cakes. So she still is resentful, but her good breeding demands that she treats him well. Nobody's going to accuse her of being disrespectful or being impertinent or being insolent to this man. We go to page 88, from line 4 to line 8. Yes, if anyone had told me when I was Miss Beresford, so this is now years ago, her maiden surname, and one of the belles of the county, a young lady, that a child of mine would have to stand half a day in a little poky kitchen working away like any servant. We might prepare properly for the reception of a tradesman, and that this tradesman should only be. Two important things stand out there. That a child is working like a common servant in a little poky kitchen. So again, Mrs. Hale is very unhappy with the circumstances that the family find themselves in. They don't even have the servant to be doing the menial labor tasks. Secondly, in one sentence, she repeats the word tradesman twice, thus emphasizing the low status, the distasteful position and occupation that Mr. Thornton has. We might prepare properly for the reception of a tradesman, something to look down on, a businessman. Okay. In line 11, Mrs. Hale says, I am myself a born and bred lady. Does she need to remind the family that she is from the upper class? I don't think she needs to do that. Okay. And then in line 14, she says, and as to Mr. Thornton's being in trade, why he can't help that poor fellow. I don't suppose his education would fit him for much else. So she's being very snobbish, and she's being condescending, and she's basically saying he can't help for being the way he is. He can't help for being their social inferior. Obviously, he didn't get much education. And again, in this chapter, we see that for Mrs. Hale, education, social class is far more important than wealth. Okay? In line 19, 20, and 21, in Mr. Thornton's house at this very same time, a similar yet different scene was going on. And then we have a description of Mr. Thornton's mother, Mrs. Thornton, who is unhappy as he is getting ready. On page 88, 4 lines from the bottom of the page, she was handsomely dressed in stout black silk. And those last 4 lines and the first paragraph on page 89, it talks about their situation at home, and it's describing the decor and the interior. So they have things of high quality, but at the same time, it's very practical items that they have. And on page 89, in line 1, very important, please make a note of this, there was not a book about the room with the exception of Matthew Henry's Bible commentaries. So they don't have books, a clear indication that they are not learned, educated people. They are not erudites at all. It's only the Bible, and that's considered basic, and the commentary which explains the Bible, that's all they have. And then in that same first paragraph, we've got the daughter who is busy practicing the piano in the background, and she plays the piano very poorly. But it's important to notice, 1, that she's playing poorly, and 2, that there's a piano, because what the daughter is doing, she is trying to develop the social skills which go hand in hand with etiquette for your Victorian woman. Right? A woman is supposed to be able to do a little bit of embroidery, a little bit of singing, a little bit of painting, a little bit of playing the piano. Those are considered appropriate skills for a Victorian woman. So now that they have the money to buy the piano, she's trying to develop this skill. Okay, then in line 15 on page 89, in fact in line 13, the mother says, what has brought you home so early? And he says, she then says, I thought you were going to go and have tea with Mr. Hale. So I am, mother. I am come home to dress. Dress? When I was a girl, young men were satisfied with dressing once a day. Why should you dress to go and take a cup of tea with an old parson? Okay, so already there's that resentment, there's that unhappiness. Mr. Hale is a gentleman. He's class. And his wife and daughter are ladies above us, right? Wife and daughter, do they teach too? Okay, so she didn't know that he was a married man, Mr. Hale. And the minute she hears that there's a daughter, the mother becomes concerned. In fact, I'd go so far as to say she feels a bit threatened, and she says in line 24, take care you don't get caught by a penniless girl, John. One, the fact that the father is a tutor. Two, the fact that he used to be a parson tells the mother, the affluent mother, that the Hales do not have money. The fact that there's a daughter means that the daughter is probably looking for a husband, because in Victorian society that is what women are always doing, looking for a husband. And you're not just going to say, okay, you're looking for someone who can improve your situation in life if you don't have money. And so obviously it makes sense from the mother's perspective that the daughter, that Margaret, would be looking for a man with money. And his response in line 25, I am not easily caught, mother. And I think it's said in a little bit of, what's the word, maybe in a sense of being naive on the part of Mr. Thornton, because he's very intelligent, he has great business acumen, he's done well, he's respected, but when it comes to women, he doesn't have much experience, and so he may think that he would be in control of the situation, but we are able to see that he would be out of his depth. And then when we go to page 90, which is the last page of chapter 9, the mother says in the second line, let's start on the first line. Miss Hale comes out of the rich aristocratic counties where, if all tales be true, rich husbands are reckoned prizes. And of course the mother is absolutely correct when she says that. But in line 6, 7, in fact to line 9, Mr. Hale says, the only time I saw Miss Hale, she treated me with haughty civility which had a strong flavour of contempt in it. She held herself aloof from me as if she had been a queen, and I, her humble, unwashed vassal. Be easy, mother. So he's aware that from their first meeting, Margaret didn't like him. She looked down on him. In fact, it's safe to say that it was more than just looking down. She saw him so far inferior to herself, even though he had money. Okay. Now, Mrs. Thornton, I suppose she's like a lot of mothers, very protective of a son, and at the same time very enamored of a son. So on the one hand, she says, be careful that you don't get caught by a penniless girl. But at the same time, when she discovers that Margaret looked down, she became quite enraged. As if, who is Margaret to look down on her son? Okay. And then she says, despise my son, treat him as her vassal indeed. Okay. I should like to know where she could find such another. You don't want it, but she also mustn't turn the son down. Okay. And then she ends off by saying, I know what Fanny is, and I know what John is. Despise him, I hate her. So without her having met Margaret, she already is very antagonistic towards Margaret. That concludes chapter 9 of our novel. I will now begin chapter 10 of North and South. Chapter 10, the epigraph is wrought in iron and gold. The line of poem says, we are the trees whose shaking fastens more. Now, wrought iron and gold. Wrought means an old-fashioned word meaning that something is worked, it is formed, it is shaped using the hammer. So you've created something, okay? And it was shaped by hammering. But when he says wrought in iron and gold, it's very interesting because, you know, I actually looked this up, and iron and gold are two metals that don't mix well. They don't mix well. It's almost like oil and water. And so what this is reference to is Mr. Thornton and Margaret, two different metals which don't mix well. So when chapter 10 begins on page 91, in line 3, he was anxious not to slight his new friend by any disrespectful unpunctuality.